Today on Crazed Performance Repair, we're going to compare the sound output of Shorty headers to long tube headers on an exhaust system that is already modified and an engine, for that matter, that has already been modified. What we have is a 2004 Tahoe. It's my personal vehicle. I had these Shorty headers on there. I have a Super 50 muffler along with gutted cats, is what originally this vehicle had. We will show you the sound of that in just a second. I'm doing a retake video because the audio quality on a couple of the clips that I took was total dog crap. It was just garbage. Every once in a while it would get totally fuzzy where I could not hear myself. And so if at any point during this video you hear my voice, it's not lining up with my mouth in the video, it's because I had to do a voiceover. So we're also giving a review of what I think of this product. Now, this is a much cheaper alternative to the brand name stuff, especially since they really don't make much options for the brand name stuff. It's well over $1,000 for a set at the time of this video or recording. That set right there I think was $600 on this company's website. So full disclosure, they reached out to me to tell me, hey, we will work with you, we will get you this headers just for an honest review. I'm going to give my non-biased opinion on it because I really don't care. Whatever crap you give me, you cannot pay me to change my opinion on what I think of a product. I do not expect these to fit perfectly because they are a cheaper branded unit. It is a newer company. They're trying to make a name for themselves. So hopefully I'm impressed, and hopefully this is a situation where it's a young company trying to make an impression and do the right thing and get going. But they have to keep that up. So let's get it open. We'll take a look at this package of stuff here. Alright, let's see. They got it bubble wrapped. Here's one header. Let's pull it out of the wrapping and take a look. Might as well bring it up to you guys. So we're going to take a look here. Now the collector, it does not have any kind of cone reduction that goes into here. This is a little short. For this application, it's not going to matter. This is not a competition vehicle. A competition vehicle, that would make a very, very slight difference. Weld quality, it's fair. It's fair. It's not extraordinary. It's not terrible. There is a little bit of a booger right here, but considering how they assembled it, I'm not surprised. The welds on the inside are actually quite nice. I'm going to grab a straight edge. We're going to look at the flange here quick. Oftentimes you'll find headers that the flanges are really warped just because of the process of assembling them. Okay, so these are warped, but it's in a good way, kind of. So if I put this up on here, and I see how it rocks back and forth, it's rocking off the center of the header. That's okay because you'll put these bolts in, and as you tighten these down, it will pull it straight, especially considering it's a long tube header. There's plenty of room for things to flex and move around. It's not preferred to have warp, but it's okay. It'll be fine. There's my initial impression. Ooh, let's grab a magnet. These are supposed to be stainless steel, I believe. Now this is a neodymium magnet, so it's from a hard drive. It's a really strong magnet. I do expect it to stick no matter what it is. Oh, it is a high quality stainless. I'm impressed. The welds though, sticks pretty well. Actually, no, that's going underneath the weld. Oh, you know what they did? I bet you. So inside here where the collector is, where all the tubes meet, where they welded together, I believe that's welded with just mild steel. Because the tube, stainless, this is stainless, and it seems like the welds, oh, this is steel. Seems like the welds are pretty much stainless. It's sticking past the weld kind of a little bit further. So that tells me where they welded the collector together, or the flange together, they used mild steel. The flange is definitely mild steel, but the tubes are stainless. So this will be a long-lasting header. So I'm fairly impressed with that. Now we just got to see how it fits. But before I do that, before we go install, I also want to see what we have for other things that come with it. Okay, so we have for the factory adapter, the thing that goes to the rest of the exhaust right there, the crossover portion of one of the tubes, and we have the other crossover portion. I do notice there is no rear O2 sensor bungs in this assembly, which is perfectly fine because mine are turned off in the tune since I have no cats to begin with. I'm in a non-emission state. Off-road use only. Wink, wink. if you need the rear O2s, you're going to have to come up with a solution there and put an extender in it and whatever else. All nice quality stainless. Even the welds that are on here, they did a real nice TIG weld here. They did fair on most of the welds, but a real nice one right there. They had a good run, whoever was doing that one. The one thing I don't care for are these style of clamps. It'll work. I'm not going to use them. I'm going to try and use this style of clamp if I can find them. I don't know if I have them on hand, but if I do, that's what I'm going to use. It's a much better alternative to those guys, because these you can take apart later. Those guys, they can crimp the pipe and make it so you can't take it apart, which sucks. Alright, I put you guys next to a shelf. The truck is going to come really close by, but you should be right by the muffler as it's coming by. I'm going to have to position the truck back and forth a few times. You're going to hear some forward, some reverse, things like that, because it's really hard to get a bigger vehicle into this bay here. The other bay would be ideal, but it's busy. So, I'm going to pull it in. Go ahead and take a listen. Just in case the microphone couldn't pick that up right, I'm going to put you behind the truck as well. It'll bounce off the wall, hopefully. We'll let it idle for a moment and we'll give it a couple revs. So, here is my beautiful pile of crap. I have a nice bunch of rust that falls out of it. It's overbuilt. I say that as far as a mechanical standpoint. I've spent a lot of time and energy, rebuilt the differential, all the brakes with the better quality brakes, rebuilt the transmission, performance upgrades in the transmission, things like that. But the motor is what's going to make the sound, along with the fact that I have a stall converter. So, as I was pulling it in here, and I was going forward and reverse, it was every time I went from drive to reverse, you really couldn't notice anything. That's because of the stall converter. It's pretty loose. It's a 2800 stall, so it's a pretty high stall. That affects the sound going in and out of gear. So when I go to neutral, into reverse, you don't really hear anything. It just stays because it's so loose down at that RPM that it really doesn't make any difference. Now, as far as the engine sound goes, I have a 4-inch stroke crank. I have the Summit Torquenator cam, which is very similar, if not dang near identical, to the Truck Norris cam. Maybe I'll throw the specs up. Maybe I'll throw my cam card up. I have that cam in there. I have some forged pistons, some budget stamp forged rods, just I-beam rods. They're nothing fancy, Eagle rods. That's a little bit of porting, not much though, very, very minimal, just around some certain dulling of edges, things like that. And then I think that's pretty much it. That's where it sits right now. Later on, I'm going to change the heads and things like that. But for now, we're going to compare what these things sound like and see how they fit, because I'm excited to find out how easy they go in. So as you can see, I am pulling all the ignition components off, and you would think you wouldn't necessarily have to do that to do a header, but if you don't, you will be breaking off spark plugs when you go to pull the header out or put the header in. And you can also see that I have a couple of bellows or insulator boots sitting on some of my spark plug wires. You can also notice that I have a different spark plug wire than factory. I do have aftermarket wires on this unit. I did it because these headers that I had in here before had an issue with interfering with the factory wires. So now we will see how much more room the long tube headers have versus these headers in regards to spark plug wires and interfering and causing any kind of burnage issue. I never had a burnage issue because I saw it ahead of time. I always look for that stuff, and you should too. So be sure to inspect quite well for wires coming across any headers or anything of that nature, and you will keep yourself from having a lot of trouble down the road. Of course, don't forget that you have to pull the dipstick tube out to do this job. And one thing to consider, if you live in the Rust Belt states, you might end up wrecking your dipstick trying to pull it out of there because sometimes it gets seized into the block or has a rusted through area. Well, out with the old, and we're gonna go in with the new. So, as you probably noticed, I cut apart the old downpipe stuff knowing I'm gonna replace it. I could have removed it if I took the transmission support brace off, but I wanted to see how these things fit without having that out of there, just to see if I could even get them up there, just leaving everything in its correct position. Specifically more so for you guys. Otherwise, I have no problem removing it because I know it'll make it easier to install. But I want to see how it fits because a lot of people are going to be doing this down on the ground. So I'm going to position the camera in a angle that allows you guys to see how much I'm tilting this thing down in order to shove these long tube headers in there, in case you're doing it on jack stands or something. You can see the huge difference between these two units. Now, this has a tag on it right here, and I had forgotten what I put in here, but it says SUM and then a part number. SUM is typically Summit, so it's probably a Summit header. I know it didn't cost me much. I believe it was like $239 for the set, which is like nothing, and it bolts onto the factory exhaust. This is going to be completely different. You can see this is the factory exhaust flange. Not the same, right? The factory exhaust has this ring on one side, and on the other side it has this goofy, oh, the seal's gone. Oh, it's over there. It has like a donut seal on the other side. And then it does have the factory flange. The new headers have a factory flange on the two pipes that join the two together that goes into here. And I can tell you right now, this actually might make more of a difference than I thought with my engine as far as power goes, because the primary tubes are bigger on here than this is. I think this is 1 5/8, and this looks like it might be 1 7/8 primary. I do not remember the description that I read, but I will, of course, link these down in my description below. Let's go ahead and get these headers installed. So you can see the flow characteristics, big difference. So let's get them installed. Alright, so I have the camera a little bit back, but not too far. I'm not going to let you see me working it in there. I'm just going to let you guys see from this angle for this side how the header has to be tilted to get in there. I'm going to also grab the other header and try and shove it in here as well while you're in that position, just to see how it fits. I think that's the one that's going to give me the most trouble. So kind of position your eyeballs right here, and that's where we'll guess jack stand wise where you would be. Oh boy, you can see I have to go down quite a way. So you would have to get it pretty high, because right now I'm hitting the firewall area. This might have to go in from the top. Sure looks that way. So either, oh, maybe, nope. Either I have to go in from the top, or I have to take this transmission brace off and manipulate the engine and tranny up and down. We'll go ahead and try this one. Okay, so this one goes a lot further, a lot easier, but I have a little concern for the angle that it's at and the four-wheel drive shaft right here. Funny thing is, this does go up easier, but I fear it's not going to fit. So I'm going to go ahead, lower the vehicle, see what I can do for sliding it in from the top. Okay, so I'm trying to put this thing in there, and it's interfering with the transmission cooler lines, the frame, and a couple other components like the AC. But I think if I take the motor mount bolts, there's 3 bolts that hold the motor mount in place. I think if I take those bolts out and tip the engine a little bit, it'll be enough to get it. So that's what I'm going to try on this side. I have yet to see what I need to do on the other side, but we'll find out shortly, I'm sure. Okay, engine is up a little bit. We'll see how it fits, if at all. Almost there. Oh, so close. A little more. Okay, so I gotta pull the coils out of the way. This is not gonna be an easy task, I can tell you that much. There we go. Alright, so there's that side. So now they do include gaskets and bolts, and I'm going to criticize them a little bit because I do not like this style of gasket, but I also understand why they did it. So either one of two reasons they did these gaskets is because they're cheap, which is understandable. It's not like it's an expensive header, or because they want to make sure they seal initially. Now, I say initially because it's not the best thing overall. So, ideally, you should have an MLS gasket on here. I'm going to go ahead and put these on, see how long they last, but I'm willing to bet you I'm going to have to retorque the bolts, and I'm sure after a long enough period of time, I'll blow it out. It's just the nature of this style of gasket. So I'll put these in. I'm not worried about it. I'm probably taking these headers off at some point because I'm probably putting a turbo on. But I want to try this and see how it goes. Now, the bolts, they look really cheap, and they are steel. I may just use my other bolts, or I do have some stainless steel bolts I could put in, but at least they do include the bolts. So, not a big fan of the hardware and gaskets that they send. The headers so far look good if they fit. So we will, I'm not going to put these in. I'm going to go get some different bolts. Actually, I'll use my rusty ones that are sitting there. I'd rather have those than these. I don't like these bolts. So, I'll put these in my bin for whatever later, and I'll use what I had. They are a standard steel rusting bolt, but these are a hardened bolt. They're like a grade 8 bolt, a little better quality, so I trust those a little more, especially since LS-based engines are prone to breaking bolts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the gasket and a couple of bolts in there just to get it to sit into place, so I can try and do the other side after. And then once I get everything into place, that's when I'll actually start bolting things down properly. But for now, I just kind of want to get them sitting into place. That way, in case having the header loose is beneficial to lining up the other side, it won't cause me drama and I'll have to take it off again. You know what I mean? So, I'm just going to leave it loose and then go for the other side. Alright, I got 2 bolts threaded in 4 or 5 threads, give or take. It's really loose in there. We'll see how the other side goes. So I'm willing to bet you that steering shaft is in the way. But for the sake of testing it, I'm going to try and shove it in there. I can pretty much guarantee things are going to get in the way on this side. Not a chance in hell. No way. So, I am going to pull the steering shaft off. There's no way I can really show you guys me doing that. There's a little, so the steering shaft has the part where the steering wheel is, the part where the actual steering gear is, and then there's a little section in between. That section is what I'm going to pull out. That should give me enough room to actually slip this in from the bottom. I don't think this one's going to go in from the top. I think this is a bottom install unit, and that's how I'm going to tackle this. I will bring you guys underneath as soon as I get that shaft out of there. Alright, we got the vehicle in the air. Let's go ahead and slide it in. I'm going to take one, thread it in there just enough to hold it in place. Then I will lower the vehicle again, and we will go ahead attach the rest of it. Oh yeah, the angle. What's the minimum angle we can do? You know what? Oh yeah, you can do a pretty minimal angle on this guy, so not too bad. But can we actually get it all the way up there? There it is. Got it. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and thread one bolt in, and then we'll go ahead and drop it back down again. Okay, one bolt is started. Before I drop it down, though, I want to kind of set this against here. Oh yeah, that should clear the drive shaft. I think that'll clear everything. This one sits a lot lower than the other one, though, and I suppose that's because of the crossover pipe going underneath the pan, and then this one has to go above the transmission bracket there. So, all right, let's lower it down and see how easy it is to kind of pre-tighten things. I'm not going to go full tight. I'm just going to snug them up with my fingers, and that's it. Okay, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but I am quite impressed so far. So I have these two sitting in place. They are loose-ish. Not much room there. I can tell where they're supposed to be. This one here. This one does not have hardly any slop that way. Okay. Now, the reason I say I'm already quite impressed is because of the clearances that they achieved with the various things. Now, if you get them, I don't know how good their jig is as far as if you'll have some variances or not. I do have a little concern for one small area, but all things considered, I expected to have to modify things by now, and I don't. So there is a spot that is for, trying to see it here. This tube, this runner right here, it goes really close to the frame, okay? Really close, but it does not touch. And once I tighten it down, it should theoretically sit a little bit closer to the engine and thus not, be even further away than it is. Now, this one here, it kind of goes up and partially over. It's actually got a decent amount of clearance. Those two are the only ones that are in any kind of question whatsoever, and they have clearance, which is impressive. This side over here, we do have enough room for the shaft to go around, and it is completely clear on this side. On the other side, however, yeah, it's completely clear as well. It comes kind of close to the heat shield for the motor mount, but aside from that, it's all clear. So now what we need to find out is how these crossover tubes and stuff interact with the things around it as well before I tighten anything down, because I want to get those in place while I have some ability to wiggle. All right. See if I can get this into place. Oh, looks like we do have to remove the transmission mount. Show you guys what I'm seeing here. If I put this guy up here, we have an issue with this header coming all the way to here and this thing being back here when I'm against that. So, theoretically, I can't quite get that on there unless I pull them out. But, I'm going to try something, just in case. Oh, snap. We might be able to get it in there. Oh, so close. Oh, so close. You know what? No, I don't want to cut it. No, I want to see if I can do it without changing anything. What I was considering is if I have the band clamps, I want to cut these guys off, right? The slots, I don't need them if I have the band clamps. And then it would fit for sure. So that's an option. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down. I'm going to leave the bolts on that side, pull just these bolts, and see if I can get just enough room with that dropped and maybe leave this connected to it. I don't think that'll work. I'll probably have to unbolt it. But I'm going to give it a try and see what comes up with. See what I come up with. Alright, so this is exactly why I didn't want to count my chickens before they hatched. Now that I have this on here, I'm seeing some problems. So, we have right here where the dry shaft goes. I'm going to go ahead and cave this in, dent it in. I think it's close enough. I can just cave it in a little bit and it will fit fine. However, it's not just that that's the problem. But this guy here is also, look at the angle it's at compared to the factory exhaust here. Not even remotely close. So if I put it so it can line up with both holes, not even close. If I turn it the other way, look at how far off that guy is there. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to have it turned this way. I'm probably going to have to cut this thing somehow to tip it down. I might even have to cut it back here to tip it down. It is definitely not ideal. It's just not going to work. So I'm going to start modifying, and I guess I will bring you back when all the modifying is done. Everything on the header side of things is perfectly fine. It's just this part they need to do a little work on. So I'll certainly let them know of that, and maybe by the time you've seen this video and maybe you're considering this kit, maybe they fixed it by then. I don't know. Hopefully so, but I'm going to fix it myself and let you know exactly what I find. So I think I got it to fit. Now, at the moment, I did have to remove this cross member, of course, but at the moment, this transfer case, I have it sit on jack stand. I have it lower than where it would normally sit, so it's against here. I have it against this guy, and I kind of manipulated things to preset them before I tighten them. So you can see I did use 2 of the clamps that it came with, and I used 2 band clamps. I am going to change these later to the band clamps. I only had 2 band clamps on hand. So what I chose to do was use the band clamps on the header area because that is the area I least want to get stuck, okay? This area, if it gets stuck, I'm not opposed to beating it up. That area, honestly, I could care less if it gets stuck. This is the only one that I need to separate. So what I'm going to do is when I tighten these things down, I'm going to make sure that I don't tighten them so much that this clamp actually squeezes down on the underlying pipe. It only puts pressure, and you can see I have the clamp all the way at the end here. I'm only putting pressure where they have these cutouts on the pipe so that it will cause that pipe to squeeze against this pipe without actually squishing the pipe. So I'm going to tighten everything down right where it's sitting. I think I have it in the position I want. And these I can tighten up nice and good like, but those two I'm going to leave a little looser. So, it did stay with everything once I tightened it down. Before, if I were to lift it up, it'd all just fall down and rest against this. So now I'm hoping that I have nothing touching, and it looks like I'm clear on all sides. So these headers worked out rather well, except for this pipe, like I was just saying. Now, what I had to do to fix it, I told you I'd tell you about. We have a weld right here. So I cut it here, and I used a 1/16 inch cutoff wheel to originally cut a kerf, and when I cut the kerf, I'm going to go over here so you guys can see it better. I take this blade and I put it about halfway through the pipe, and then I use a little bit thinner Sawzall blade to cut down the pipe the rest of the way, and then I bent it. This one did not require much. I also dented right where that drive shaft goes across. That was a real bear to do. I probably could have got by without doing it, but I did it anyway just to get a little extra room, just because it doesn't hurt. And then right here was the hard one. This one, I did the same thing as this on this side, and then I put a little more on the very end to get a fold there. And then I took this side, I did another cut, but this time I probably cut a little over 1/4 inch at the very beginning part, and then I tapered it all the way down to the thickness of my Sawzall blade on the opposite end here without cutting all the way through. Folded it, welded it, and off to the races I go. Then this thing was actually able to line up. So basically the part that they screwed up is going to be either this weld right here or this weld right here, where they could have certainly angled that down more to make it function correctly. And then of course this area they didn't compensate for this shaft, or maybe the collector pipe on the header is tipped up a little bit more than it should have been. Maybe it should have been down a little more. That would have taken care of it too. So a couple small things they could have done differently, but all in all, considering the price of the kit, pretty good. I'm going to finish assembling it. You guys see what it takes to assemble. I'll go ahead and tighten everything else up, and then we will come back with a listening video and my full opinion. Well, I was supposed to pop in here to give you the full review, but we have one more problem. This guy here is hitting right there. So my positions have changed. This pipe needs to be changed almost completely. It really needs to be put that way more. The problem is then you won't be able to remove your oil pan. But that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, yeah, you got to go through a little extra work. Just make sure you use the clamps that I talked about so you can take the thing apart when you need to service your transmission pan. But what I'm going to do instead of doing anything with the pipe is I'm going to notch out this frame right here. This is just the transmission brace. I'm going to notch it out. If I feel ambitious, I'll go ahead and throw a small piece of metal in there and weld it in place. But I'm going to notch this out for the exhaust because I'd rather have the clearance for the oil pan myself. And I'll just go ahead and do this so I can still take that pan off, because I like to service my transmission on a regular basis, every few oil changes or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and pull this back down, cut that out. So I'm ready to go ahead and give you guys a listen to this truck. Now the shop is full where it was before, but I brought it a little bit further away from the wall that's behind you. And the reason I did that is to get the same kind of sound effect. This wall is going to be a little bit more of an echoey wall than the wall that was in my shop, so I made it a little bit further away in hopes to bring it as close to possible as the same exact positioning in the shop. I'm going to start it, let you guys take a listen. We'll give it a overall rating and a final test drive, and then a very last minute we'll give it a full comparison sound to sound wise. Hopefully the wind isn't going to affect it too much because it is quite windy out. I rate this exhaust system? If I were to give it a 1 to 10 rating, how would I rate this? Well, we're going to rate it with several different scales. First off, install. Was it easy? Was it hard? 10 being very easy, 1 being very hard. As far as, because of the fact that it took some modification, I certainly can't give it a 10, okay? However, I know what it's like to install exhaust systems on various different vehicles, and I'd consider this one of the easier installs. So I'd say probably a 5, okay? I'm not going to apply that score to the score I'll give the product, though, because that's based off of the vehicle it's going in more so than it is the product itself. As far as product itself rating goes, quality in material and craftsmanship, I will give that pretty dang good score. I'd say that's probably right there in a 7-8, so it's pretty high. The reason I'm docking it a little bit is because the TIG welds weren't super pretty. I mean, they're pretty, don't get me wrong, but they're not like a real high quality, top tier, professionally built header. That'd be a 10. I'm talking beautiful laid dimes. I would not expect something like that from a budget header. But I'm rating it overall absolute best quality I've seen, worst quality I've seen. So I'm giving it a pretty good rating, 7 to 8, maybe 7.5, right? And the fact that they used some mild steel where all the pipes come together right in the center of all the pipes in the collector area. They didn't use the stainless steel they should have, so that's going to dock it a little bit. And then they used a mild steel flange, so I'll dock it a little bit there. Otherwise, they used probably 304 stainless steel, really high quality stainless steel for all the runners and all the exhaust pipe. A neodymium magnet wouldn't even stick to it. That's why I'm bumping it up a bit. That gives them a higher score. The quality of stainless they used brings it up a notch. Okay, hardware, terrible hardware. Those clamps that they sent, I would never use those long term on one of these. The bolts looked really cheap, and the gasket, I get it. I'm not going to dock them for the gasket, I get it. But the bolts and that deal, I'd say probably a 5 on that. I would not give a very high rating on the hardware. But the hardware is a minimal point to the score. Now, the amount of modification needed to do this is going to drop the score a little bit as well. Because of that, compared to the price is where I'm going to go with this. You saw the headers I showed at the beginning of the video if you were watching. And those units were $2,000 to $3,000 for a set of headers. Nobody in their right mind in this day and age is going to put that kind of money into one of these old Tahoes or Suburbans or whatever, unless it happens to be a pristine vehicle. Okay, it'd have to be something that has been garage kept or whatever for its entire life. With that said, this one being under $600, that is worth the money. That I could definitely see somebody spending the money on to put into one of these, even if it's not exactly the best, cleanest vehicle out there. I mean, hell, I put it in my truck, and I probably would pay for that amount of money to put it in my truck now that I know of its quality, okay? With that said, that is going to bump the score up quite a bit. The price is definitely right. It's definitely within the realm, and you just have to do a little modifying. As long as you have access to stainless steel welding, you can go ahead and get these and modify it just a little bit to make it work, and it's well worth the amount of savings. I mean, you're talking $1,400 upwards to $2,400 worth of savings compared to what else is available there, besides the really cheap $200 to $300 sets that I did see some listed, but I question whether they're even actually real. I mean, they were like weird Chinese sites and stuff. Now, the site that this one is on, yeah, they could use some site work. They need somebody to go into their website and clean things up, make sure they get the primary sizes on there, things like that. That kind of stuff needs to be addressed. Overall, total score for this header set, I would say, is a 7. Okay? Definitely worth the money. Needs a little work in their jig to make sure it fits. That would bring it up substantially. And sound quality-wise, I love it. I friggin' love it. It sounds awesome. I'm going to take it for a drive here now, and we're going to see how it feels.
I already know how it feels, but I'm going to let you guys watch the speedometer and things like that. So you already know my engine specs if you were paying attention earlier. If you have one of these vehicles, this will give you a general idea of the kind of stuff I've done, what it'll give you for a return as far as acceleration and things like that. My speedometer has not been recalibrated at all. Everything's still factory as far as that goes, so you're not going to see anything funny business there. The only thing that you'll notice is the shift is going to make the speedo jump a little bit because I have such a hard, firm shift with the amount of work I put into the transmission. You won't expect that even if you build the motor. With that said, let's go on a drive, let's see what it does, and end this video. I should also be sure to note that I did pick up a very noticeable amount of power. I'd say 10 horsepower, give or take, and easily that in torque as well. So it made a big difference in power, and I'm very happy with that. But it made such a difference that I feel like I need to address the tune a little bit. So I'm going to be going in here later and addressing the tune because I feel like there's more potential there just in the tune alone. I think now I'm under fueling it a little bit, running it a little bit leaner than I want to. And the timing might have to change a little bit because of that. But overall, I love it. So I'm giving you guys a view of the instrument cluster here, and the microphone is turned around to the back. And what I'm gonna do is have you listen. I have the rear windows open, the front windows shut. So I had to stop. The rear window started doing the whoop, 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 the whoop, 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 whoop sound. So I had to quit at that speed. Otherwise, it would have sounded terrible. In fact, the camera shut off anyway. So let's go ahead and do the side-by-side comparison. Like, share, subscribe. Hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.